someone's room. Yeah. Yes, if you're on Zoom, it's very lovely for me if I can see your face. If you can set your camera to on, so that I can see you and get some of your actual live reactions, even if they are momentarily behind the live audience that are here. I promise I won't, have a go at you for being slow or anything. And and we do have you through the sound system, so we can in fact hear you as well. So do feel free to unmute and give me live responses, snorts of derision, guffaws of disbelief, etc. are all very welcome, as are, of course, laughter and applause. Yes, yes. These being the food of the performer. But you all know this. So, onwards. It's very weird. I can hear myself coming back slightly in a slight delay on it, but I'm sure that's all fine and we'll get on. So, tonight, I rather rashly went, I know, I'll do Apocalypse. I'll do the end of the world. That'll be fun. Yeah, well, exactly. We will come on to that as we go through the evening. And it's a stupidly big subject. And, of course, all of the material is not folkloric. Folklore rarely has. It does have the odd apocalypse, but they tend to be much lower key than your mythological apocalypse. And the mythological ones, well, they can be involved, as you will discover, and usually involve a lot of names. There's an awful lot of stuff you have to wade through. You've got to kind of, there's a lot of background and detail and so forth, which, when normally doing a tour, I've got time. As it is these days where I do a new show every month, apparently. I only had a couple of weeks, so yeah. Nevertheless, we are. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine, Vic. It's yeah. We're gonna. Just give it a wiggle. Awesome. It's happening down there. It's all. So. The first story is going to be from a collection of the earliest mythologies we have, the earliest tales that we have written down. And it's kind of famous stuff. And right, yes. It's not coming out of the speaker, it's coming out of the camera, of course. Why didn't we spot that sooner? Yes, excellent. Job done. Good. This comes from the set of the earliest tales that we have available to us, written down. And you get two kinds of apocalypses. I prefer apocalypse. You get two kinds of apocalypse. Those that happened at the beginning, and those that are going to happen at the end. And being a sort of literal kind of fellow, despite all of the metaphor that comes into my work, that's how we're going to take the evening on. We're going to start at the beginning. Start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. You may have heard of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, yes, we all know Gilgamesh. But the bits you've mostly heard about him are his adventures. And he goes to the cedar forest and kills Humbaba. But his friend Enkidu is slain by the gods in revenge for the destruction of the guardian of the forests, and following that, the destruction of the forests. Once he had lost his friend, sadness fell upon Gilgamesh. And so he went off across the lands, mourning and crying and feeling the great weight of mortality upon him. So my friend was a part of me. It's like a limb has been cut off. I'm lost without him. And what is to become of me? He is now clay. Will I become clay too? And he travelled through the land and he heard rumours and got advice. And they said, go to the end of the earth. Just double hit on this one. Go to the end of the earth. Go to the end of the earth. Go beyond the end of the earth and there find Utnapishtim. And Utnapishtim will have the secret, will have the answer for you. And so Gilgamesh travelled, and he travelled to the ends of the earth, and he found the boatman, Ushinabi. And Ushinabi carried him across the waters to Utnapishtim. And Utnapishtim said, what is it you want? And Gilgamesh explained his terrible loss, his desire for immortality, his desire to avoid death. Utnapishtim started giving him advice. And then Gilgamesh said, hold on, who are you? I mean, who are you to be telling me this? How do you know? What is your secret? Are you pals with the gods? How is it that you have immortality? For Utnapishtim himself was destined never to die of old age. Utnapishtim said, you see, long ago, way back when the earth was new, only the gods walked upon the land. Only the gods. And they divided up creation between them. They cast lots. And then Anu took the heavens, and Enlil took the earth, and Enki, for his lot, got the shores and the sea. And the lesser gods, the Ijiji, did the work. And it was that dug and ploughed, and they dug out the rivers, and they piled up the mountains, and they worked and they worked. Just as a little aside, the Ijiji, they're spelt I-G-I-G-I. Yeah. And I immediately I don't know why, I kind of eliminated all sorts of possibilities and just went Ijiji. That's how that should be pronounced. And then I was, for part of my research, listening to things on YouTube and so forth, where people were pronouncing it Igigi. Which just sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? I did exactly, what? Igigi. It's like, the giggly. But how do you pronounce G's in Sumerian? What other Sumerian words do I know? Obviously Gilgamesh, in which all the G's are hard. So maybe Igigi is right. Oh. What if you pronounce Gilgamesh with soft G's? Gilgamesh. So, it sounds like a French tobacco. Gilgamesh. He could not make himself immortal. It will not make you immortal. But he enjoyed a rough shack. Now you can too. Yes. I think cutting to a shot that's got to be about like this, and it's a woman's mouth with red lipstick. The rest of the picture is black and white. Only the lips are red. She's just taking a drag. And
You're missing the lipstick.
I'm missing the lipstick, yeah. But, you know, there's only so much you can do. And unmute myself. How did I mute myself? And and you just hear the voice, just these lips and the drag right up close. And you just hear this soft, smoky woman's voice. And, I like to suck on a smooth Sumerian. Anyway, yes. So, if you'll forgive the inconsistency, Gilgamesh gets hard G's, because he's like that, and the Ijiji will remain with soft G's, even though it's completely inconsistent and probably wrong. So, yes, the Ijiji had to do all the work. They dug out the rivers, they dug out the canals, they piled up the mountains. They worked for 3,600 years, they toiled. And then they turned to each other and said, I'm knackered. Fuck this for a game of soldiers. Why are we working? The Anunnaki, they're just up in there having a great time. We provide them with everything they need. Well, let's throw our tools down and burn them. And they threw their tools down and they burnt them. They burnt their tools. And then they went to Enlil. We shall go to Enlil and we shall have words with him. And they gathered and they went to Enlil's house. And they stood around in a great rabble. And the doorman, Nuska, heard the noise. And he went to Enlil and he woke him and said, there is a great noise, as doormen are rather wont to do. And Enlil said, well, what is that noise? Who are these people? What's this rabble around my doors? And Nuska said, well, let's call the other gods. And they called the other gods. And Anu came, and Enki came, and the Anunnaki came. And all the great gods were gathered there. And they said, who are these people? Who is raising this shout? Who's making all this noise? And then Enlil said, Nuska, get your weapons. Get your weapons and stand in front of me. And then go to the door and find out what all this racket's about. Ask them, who has raised this noise, this shout? Who is this rabble running round my door? So Nuska went to the door. Those of you who have heard me do Inanna will recognise this theme with the Sumerian gods and their doormen. It seems to be a big thing. And so Nuska went to the door and he opened the door and he looked out and he said, who are you? Who is this rabble? Why are you raising a rabble around our door? And they said, you tell him. No, you tell him. I said, I'm not telling him. It was your idea. Okay, well, I think you've got a better voice for this kind of stuff. No, well, yeah, but I can't remember what to say. Oh, somebody tell him. And Allah stood forward and he said, that's just A-L-L-A. There's no H involved. It's not that Allah. It's a different Allah. And Allah stood forward and said, yeah, we've been working really hard and we're broken down with the work, with the toil. We're stooped and bent. It is killing us. And then Neil said, well, sorry, I've got to remember. Nuska said, right, I'll go and tell them. And Nuska gathered his weapons and went back. He said that they are broken down with toil. They are worn out. They are knackered. And they don't want to do it anymore. And then Lil said, well, that's not on. We aren't having that. And then he said, well, no, but I mean, they have been working pretty hard. And there ought to be something we can do. And then he said, well, why don't we kind of get somebody else to do the work? And I said, well, what kind of somebody else are you thinking of? There's only us. There's the Ijiji and the Anunnaki. And who else could do the work? He said, well, we have mother goddesses here. Let us call upon the mother goddess, whose name, would you believe, is Mammy. You call upon Mammy. Mammy, will you make people? Will you make humans? He said, well, I could do, but I mean, this is more kind of Enlil's sort of thing. He'll do a great job of it. Yeah.
He's very good at making eyes.
And Enki said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tread some clay, if you like. And Mammy said, well, if you do the clay, I'll do the making. But what we need is some way to bring them to life. So we'll have to kill one of the gods. Amazingly, the gods didn't argue with this at all. and none of the texts go into great detail of how they decided. But Iluwelu was the one who was chosen because he was intelligent. Iluwelu has intelligence, we'll kill him. What? So they killed Iluwelu and they spilt his blood upon the clay. And then all the gods, the Ijiji and the Anunnaki, spat upon the blood on the clay. And Enki trod it. And then Mammy took it and fashioned it, broke off 14 lumps and put them either side of a brick. And she called 7 earth mothers to her. And they each took one. And it all gets a little bit obscure here, but eventually you end up with humanity. And a whole load of instructions about placing bricks on the floor. And then people were made, the first 7 people, and then they paired off together. And the people spread across the country, and the country became too wide and too prosperous and numerous, and they made a great noise, like the bellowing of a bull. And Enlil said, what is all that noise? For goodness, God, there's a royal racket going on. It's humanity. Well, that didn't work out. Well, I can't have that. I can't sleep. Namata, open up your chest and set free the Sharupa plague. So Namata opened his chest and he set free the Sharupa plague.
Chest or chest?
Chest. Yeah, not chest.
No way.
It's God, so you never know. And the Sharupa plague fell upon the people, and they were sore beset. Sharupa plague. Yes. I don't know, don't ask me. I think I'm some kind of expert. The Sharupa plague, and the people suffered and they fell on all sides. And one of them, called Atrahasis, which means extra wise, who talked to his god, Enki, and Enki talked to him. And he said to Enki, "What? We're dying here. What can we do?" And Enki said, "Don't tell anybody I told you this, but what you need to do is just spread the word, stop praying to your gods, stop praying to your goddesses, make a new temple to Namata and sacrifice to him, and everybody take a loaf and burn it, and the burnt flour offering will rise to Namata." And so Atrahasis spread the word, and the people did as he said. And they stopped praying to their gods, and they stopped praying to their goddesses, and they built a new temple to Namarata. And they took loaves and they burnt them. And Namarata received the offerings, and he felt compassion grow in his breast. And so he took away his hand, he took away the Sharupa plague. 600 years, less than 600 years passed. Yeah, it's a bit It's one of those, isn't it? So was it 600 years or was it not 600 years? I'm not telling you. 600 years, not 600 years past. A while, but not that long. And the people became numerous and spread across the land. And they made a great noise, like unto a roaring bull. And Enlil said, "What is this fucking racket? I can't sleep. Just, it's these humans again. Right. Adad, stop up your waters. We shall make their crops die, and then they can starve." And Adad stopped up the waters, and the wells ran dry, and no rain fell, and no dew. And the people died. Oh. And Atrahasis said, Enki, what can I do? And Enki said, stop praying to your gods, stop praying to your goddesses, build a temple to Adad, take loaves, burn them, yeah, and then the smoke will rise up to the gods. That's the one, yeah. And Enki spread the word, and the people stopped praying to their gods and their goddesses, and they built a temple to Adad, and they brought loaves, and they burnt them, and the burnt flour offering rose to Adad. They went, this is pretty cool. I like this. Okay. And he snuck out. And during the night, he went down and spread dew upon the land. And so brought fertility to the fields. Like a thief, he made them produce ninefold. And the people were saved. Yeah. And went back to their old ways of praising their gods. Yeah, 600 years, not 600 years, passed, and the people grew plentiful and covered the land, and they got noisy, like roaring bulls. And then Lil said, Jesus, how long is this going to go on? They're at it again. Right, I've had it this time. We'll have the shrub plague and the drought. Everybody, and nobody helped them out this time. And the people were sore beset, badly oppressed. And in the second year, it doesn't say what happens in the first year. In the second year, they finished up all their stores. In the third year, they grew bent and haggard. In the fourth year, their shoulders slumped, once proud, and they died. And in the fifth year, daughters looked at mothers sideways as they came through the doors. Mothers would not let their daughters into the house.
So we're going to hell.
In the sixth year, mothers watched the scales as their daughters were sold. Daughters watched the scales as their mothers were sold at auction. Daughters were served up as meals. Sons were killed for food. You. I think it's more the food problem. And the Lachmu warriors of Enki felt sadness stir in their hearts. And so they opened the wells and took away the plague. And once more, the people grew and spread across the land. And like idiots, they made a great noise like a roaring bull. Clearly hadn't learned anything. And Enlil said, right, I've had enough of all of this, and you lot letting them off with it every time. There's always somebody cracks. You're all going to swear an oath that nobody will help them out. And Enki, you're going to bring waters and floods, and Adad, you're going to bring storms, and we're just going to drown the entire freaking lot of them. When shall we do this? About 120 years? Okay. And Enki waited until I've forgotten his name. God. Atrahasis, that's the one. It's not an easy name to remember. Waited until Atrahasis was on the other side of a reed fence. And he casually said, reed wall, listen, you might want to take your house down and it's a reed house, take your reed house down and turn it into a boat. Build a boat, really big one. You'll want to save quite a lot of stuff, all of your stuff certainly, and your family, and make it about an acre in area, and make it round reed boat, and put decks in it, and divisions, have 7 divisions on the outside and 9 in the middle, and then put a roof on the whole thing, because it's going to get rainy and wet. And Atrahasis, he went to work, he planted cedar trees and they grew, and he took down his house and he built a reed boat and covered it with pitch all over, outside and in, and he built it with decks and he made it an acre in area, and he made it round, and when it was all completed, he invited his family to come and visit, and he threw a party in the boat, and they had a feast in the boat. And as they were in the boat, he kept looking outside, and then he heard the sound of a dad cracking thunder through the air, and the rain began to fall. He said, quick, get some pitch. They got some pitch and they sealed up the doors. And then the flood came, and the boat of Atrahasis was raised up upon the waters, which covered all of the land. And the people drowned. And they called out to their gods as they were drowning. And the gods retired to the high heavens. And there they watched in horror. And they said, this is awful. They're dying. They're just like piling up all over the waters like dragonflies. And Mammy said, it's like when a raft gets overturned out in the wild country and the people just drowning. I can't bear to listen. Why have we done this? And then Lil said, we all swore an oath. Look, trust me, it's going to be nice and peaceful after this. These humans, we can do without them. And Enki said, can we? And said, yeah, of course we can. Said, what are we going to eat? Sorry, what? What are we, gods, going to eat? And there were no offerings, and the temples were underwater. No smoke rose to the heavens, and the gods grew hungry. They tried to speak, but all they could do was bleat like sheep. "7 days passed,